He wanted to live out his fantasies and perform sexual acts to a dead body. Hello everyone, it's Alyssa with True Crimeless. If you are new, welcome, glad you could join. So I'm officially back here on YouTube. I did take a much needed break, but now I am back and ready to continue on talking about these cases. I feel that it's really important to talk about these stories to make sure that these victims are not forgotten, but also to just spread awareness of the dangers that are out there, because unfortunately, people that do these horrific acts are all around us every day, and most of the time, I bet we don't even know it. So I actually started researching today's case back around Halloween time, which was connected to the fact that this case actually occurred on Halloween back in 2012. But obviously it's now into December, but regardless, we need to talk about it. And I feel like you guys are going to be so frustrated when you hear the details of this case. I know I was, and all I have to say is be mindful about those that enter your close circle. Rebekah Jane Gay was born on March 26, 1988 in Midland, Michigan to her parents, Thomas and Sally Gay. She would grow up with two brothers and a sister, and overall Becky lived to the fullest by enjoying the little things and pursuing passions that brought her joy, and a lot of people around her saw her as a huge inspiration. After graduating from high school in 2007, Rebekah went on to attend cosmetology school, which led her to working at Bo Rick's Hair Care. After working at the salon, Rebekah got a new job at the local Goodwill store that was in the city of Mount Pleasant, which is about 2 hours north of Detroit, where she lived with her 3-year-old son, Conway. While working at the store, a position opened up for a store lead, which would put management experience on Rebekah's resume. Being that she was ambitious, Rebekah interviewed for the position. This was a step towards furthering her career and could lead to even more potential opportunities in the future. To no shock, Rebekah would end up being chosen for the job. Now, the owner of the store had a brother named Aaron Quinn, who Rebekah fell interested in, and they would eventually begin to date for the next couple of years. Pretty quickly, Aaron's family grew very fond of Rebekah. His sister even stated that Rebekah was the nicest and kindest person she had ever met, whose voice was, quote, gentle and soft as an angel. But besides that, Aaron's family had never seen him more happy than when he was with her. At this point, Rebekah was thriving. She had met a man she was absolutely happy with. She moved into a trailer with her son and got a recent promotion at work. And besides all of that, she had a great relationship with her family, especially her mother, Sally. Her and her mother would attend a small local church in Mount Pleasant where they lived. Now, Sally and Rebekah's father did get divorced back when Rebekah was younger, and at this point, Sally was single, until she would meet John Douglas White, who was the pastor at the church her and Rebekah attended. Not only would Sally and John start to date, but they would eventually become engaged. You would think, okay, this must be a good guy, he's a pastor. It's easy to think that they have good morals, but this was far from the truth. John was 55 years old when he met Sally, and previously in his life he had served in the Navy and then would become a long-haul truck driver. Now, while John was a truck driver, he found himself dabbling with sex workers and would even make inappropriate slurs to the female Department of Transportation workers, basically just being a disrespectful perv. In 1980, John was 22 years old, living in Battle Creek, Michigan, where he was married to his first wife. During this time, they had a neighbor who had a 17-year-old daughter named Teresa Etherton. One day, John had asked Teresa if she wanted to come look at his new race car track that he had built in his basement. They were friendly neighbors and their families had good relations, so to Teresa, she didn't think there was any ill intent with this invitation. Once he lured Teresa into his basement, things took a nasty turn. John proceeded to stab her repeatedly and upwards of 15 times, all while having a smile on his face. Teresa would end up miraculously surviving the attack and stated that after John had stabbed her, he wiped her mouth and kissed her on the lips while holding her hand and telling her, quote, "You're going to go now. I'm really sorry you had to go like this. But what the fuck, you're just a woman," end quote. And if this doesn't go to show how little respect this person had for women, I don't know. I don't know what to say. And now John would get arrested for attempted murder and was sentenced to 5 to 10 years with recommended mental health counseling, which is not long enough in my opinion for someone that tried to kill someone. And this case wasn't a freak accident. He intentionally lured Teresa with the intent to kill her. Now, I am in no way a professional, but even if he served a full 10 years, what's not to say that he wouldn't find her and go after her or after someone else after he got out? It's horrifying to think that these kinds of people can be free again. And to make it worse, John only served 2 years for this crime before he got out on an appeal. Yes, you heard me right. 2 years for attempting to kill someone. I guess this was due to the fact that John's lawyer at the time never raised the insanity defense when John would have done so if his attorney presented it as an option. In addition, John's dad was the one paying for all of his attorney's fees at the time, and in order for John to plead insanity, a psychiatric evaluation would have had to be conducted, but this would have costed around $1,000, which his dad did not want to pay for. So basically, John wanted to claim partial amnesia. So because he could not afford the psychiatric exam and the insanity plea was not given as an option, John claimed that his attorney did not have the best interest of his client, so John appealed for a new sentence. This is why John only served 2 years for this attempted murder case instead of the initial 5 to 10 years. When John was released from jail, he was put on probation for 2 years, contingent with getting mental health treatment. This part makes me so angry, but Teresa was never informed that John got out early and was a free man. Like, can you imagine? Now, a few years later, the Victims' Right Act was set into law, which requires the court to inform victims when any updates occur on their case. But this went into law after John was already freed. Teresa would end up finding out about John being a free man, but listen to this. While she was in line at the Secretary of State's office, she heard a person call out her name. When she turned around, to her horror, John was standing in line smiling at her. Just think about how terrifying that must have been, that not only did Teresa not know that John got out of jail, but to turn around and see the person that tried to kill you, it's horrifying. Like I said, John is now a free man, but this would not be the last time John served time. During this time, his wife would end up staying with him after he got out of jail, and this might have been a contributing factor, but they did have 2 children already and another on the way. It's now 1994, and John, still being married to his first wife, was having an affair with a coworker, 26-year-old Vicky Sue Wall. But things escalated when Vicky went missing one day. She was last seen getting into John's pickup truck in the parking lot of a supermarket around 3 in the morning. When John was questioned, he stated that he dropped Vicky off at her house that evening and never harmed her. However, police simply did not believe anything that John was saying to them. 6 weeks later, Vicky's body was found in a wooded area about 2 miles from the supermarket she was last seen alive. But due to the lack of evidence and Vicky's body being so decomposed, police could not find evidence linking John to her murder, but did find that she was nude with her shirt and bra wrapped around her neck. Investigators would bring John back in for questioning and decided to do a luminol test in John's truck, and this is when they found multiple areas of blood. So if it wasn't for the luminol, which is basically a chemical that glows a blue color when mixed with an oxidizing agent, such as blood, police would not have discovered the blood in John's truck. Investigators even stated that he did a thorough job cleaning. When John was confronted with this finding, he said he might have harmed Vicky, but has no memory of doing so as he was recently dabbling with pills and alcohol, where according to John, he was having blackout spells where he thinks he does violent things during these episodes, but again, has no memory of it. Now, John's wife at the time did tell investigators that he has multiple personalities and mentioned that John had claimed when he is doing something, he, quote, feels like he is watching from somewhere else. Now, the state could not determine Vicky's cause of death, but the pathologist did suggest that the manner of death was homicide. Prosecutors ended up charging John with open murder. This is when John agreed to plead no contest to involuntary manslaughter, Basically, the no contest, from my understanding, just means that he chose to accept the conviction and punishment of involuntary manslaughter without actually admitting he is guilty. John was then put behind bars from 1995 to 2007, serving 12 years for this crime, and during this time is when him and his wife would get a divorce. She went on to live her life with their children while John remained in prison. And according to a letter John wrote to his wife at the time, he wanted this. He wanted his family to get away from him because he believed that they would be better off, and I completely agree. While John was in prison for these years, he claimed to have made significant change. He wanted to do better, which led him to getting his credentials in ministry as he wanted to pursue becoming a pastor. Despite John claiming his progress, he would meet with a prison psychologist about his fantasies. That he not only wanted to kill the prosecutor and his defense attorney, but he wanted to perform sexual acts to their dead bodies. Reasonably so, the prison warned the two women, but a person with these desires scares the crap out of me. 2 years after being released from prison in 2009 for this open murder case, John's dreams of being in ministry would come true when he landed a job as a pastor for a 14-member church in Mount Pleasant, the same church that Rebekah and her mom Sally attended. And now, I had mentioned before that Sally and John got engaged, but Sally did not know anything about John's criminal past. Talk about skeletons in the closet. It's now October 30th, 2012, and 24-year-old Rebekah had plans to celebrate Halloween with her 3-year-old son Conway and her boyfriend Aaron the following day. So Rebekah decorated her home for the upcoming holiday, just as a lot of people do. And she specifically put up 8 scarecrows in her front yard. Now, although I do love the thrill of scary decorations, I appreciate people like Rebekah that put up less eerie decor because my toddler so far is not a fan of anything freaky. But anyway, on Halloween Eve, Rebekah seemed to have a normal night with her son and eventually would go to bed anytime after 10 p.m. The following day, which was October 31st, so it's now Halloween, Rebekah did not show up to work, which was unusual behavior from her, as she would at minimum let the store know if she was not going to be in that day. As a result, one of her coworkers decided to swing by Rebekah's home to check on her and make sure that everything was okay, but the coworker did not know where Rebekah lived. He did get a hold of one of Rebekah's friends, Andrea, where she had let him know that Rebekah had put out all those scarecrows in her yard for Halloween, and this would be a way that he could find her trailer. When the coworker arrived to the home, Rebekah did not answer her door, so the coworker assumed that maybe she just wasn't home. He even tried to see if the front door was unlocked, but quickly he found out that it was locked, and therefore he could not gain entry into the home. Strangely enough, though, Rebekah's car was seen in the parking lot of a bar called the Barn Door, which was less than 300 yards from her trailer. Her car was parked in an unusual place. It was actually backed into a fence by all these pine trees, which was an unusual place for someone to park in that lot. Police also spoke to the employees that worked at the bar, and they stated that Rebekah's car was not in the parking lot when the bars closed. So, leading to the fact that it must have been dropped off there after the bar had closed down. As her family grew more concerned about her whereabouts, the landlord for Rebekah's trailer was contacted so they could come and unlock the front door. Upon entering the home, they immediately noticed that Rebekah herself was nowhere in sight. And this is when her friends and family really started to get concerned about her safety and well-being. This is when the Isabel County Sheriff's Office executed a search warrant of Rebekah's residence and vehicle in hopes they would find direction on her whereabouts. When they searched her trailer, the carpet appeared to have been recently cleaned, but they noticed there was some sort of struggle that occurred, which led to Rebekah's home being ruled a crime scene. There was also inconsistencies inside Rebekah's car where the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, which was not ideal given Rebekah's height. The people closest to her were interviewed, such as her boyfriend Aaron and her son Conway's father Chad, but both men were ultimately cleared as being suspects. Another person who was questioned, if you could guess, was her mother Sally's fiance, 55-year-old John White. Being that John lived in the same trailer park as Rebekah, and being that John helped Rebekah by dropping Conway off at his dad's each Wednesday, it was routine for police to interview him. Now, since Halloween fell on a Wednesday this particular year, it again was routine for John to take Conway to his father Chad's house, and Chad did confirm with police that John in fact dropped Conway off Halloween morning. On John's account, the day started off normal, with him arriving to Rebekah's house around 6:30 a.m. to watch Conway before leaving to drop him off at his dad's. When John arrived, Rebekah's door was unlocked, so he let himself in. John claimed that upon entering her home, Rebekah was in the bathroom getting ready and told John to just wait on the couch until Conway woke up because he was still sleeping. This is when John fell asleep on the couch, then was awoken by Conway around 8:30 a.m. But at this point, Rebekah had already left for work, and John claimed he slept through her leaving. Which I just find this strange, at least for me as a parent. If I was leaving for work and there was someone at my home who was watching my kid for me, I would wake them up if they fell asleep, as they are now responsible for watching my child when I'm no longer there. Like, you get what I'm saying? So already in John's story, this is a red flag to me that Rebekah just left without telling John she's leaving. After waking up on the couch, John then got Conway ready for the day and dropped him off at his dad's house. So this is important to note, but while detectives were interviewing John, he had scratches on his hands and a cut on his nose. And when questioned about this injury, John stated it was from a shelf in his trailer that had fallen on him, and he actually showed investigators where this happened, so the incident seemed credible. But as part of the investigation, it is routine that they look into John's background. I mean, so far it's believed that John was the last person to see Rebekah. While looking into the minister's background, it seemed as though people were either one way or another about him, like that he was a good preacher, and others would say that he was just strange and creeped them out. He did lead a small church called the Christ Community Fellowship, which was in Deerfield Township, and like I had mentioned earlier, this was the church that Rebekah and her mom attended. Investigators did ask John to take a polygraph test, in which he reluctantly agreed when Rebekah's mom, Sally, who was also his fiance, asked him to do so. Now, he did not want to take this lie detector test because of his criminal past, like we went over in the beginning of the video. Rebekah's case took a major turn when questionable items were discovered. The same day of Rebekah's disappearance, on the evening of Halloween, a trooper found blood and a broken necklace in the back of John's truck. Reasonably so, a search warrant was obtained for John's vehicle. Now, during the time of this discovery, John was at the police station performing the polygraph test. When detectives searched his vehicle, they found construction garbage bags, zip ties, a rubber mallet, and a pair of women's underwear. And now it was determined that John was being deceitful when he flunked the lie detector test. It's now around 3 a.m. the following day, November 1st, when investigators showed John pictures of the blood in his truck along with the broken necklace, and John completely denied having any knowledge in regards to those findings. I can only imagine what investigators are thinking at this point. With John's criminal history and the items found in his truck, seems like there is a high possibility John could be responsible for Rebekah's disappearance. And in fact, John was finally ready to talk. But before John agreed to share any information he knew about Rebekah's whereabouts, he wanted something in exchange. John requested that in return for information, he be given a life sentence where he would be segregated from other prisoners. All I can think about at this point is that John did something horrible to Rebekah, because why would he specifically want those terms if he did nothing? And it went from Rebekah being missing to possibly no longer alive. I mean, requesting a life sentence alludes to the fact that he doesn't want the death penalty. But Michigan abolished the death penalty back in 1963. So in my opinion, he's admitting guilt without admitting guilt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's being sus. When John started unfolding the events that happened, it actually started the day before Halloween on Tuesday, October 30th. John was at his home drinking beers while also watching pornographic websites. But the sites he was on showed people committing sexual acts on dead bodies. This led John to feeling intrigued by necrophilia, which led him to fantasizing about committing the same acts to Rebekah. Obviously, she is still alive, so how could he? And if you remember, when John was in prison, he told the psychiatrist that he had these fantasies. So clearly this wasn't a new desire for John. Well, after about 5 beers, John sparked the courage to show up at Rebekah's house, where he let himself in as her door was commonly left unlocked. John proceeded to hit Rebekah over the head repeatedly with a rubber mallet, then secured a cable tie around her neck. And according to court documents, John heard Rebekah say, quote, "I know you," while he was attacking her. With now Rebekah's lifeless body, he dragged her into the kitchen where he removed her clothes. And you guys, while this is all happening, her 3-year-old son Conway was sleeping snug in his bed yards away from them. Just let that sink in. It just breaks my heart, and to know that he never for a second thought of Conway, a kid that he was very much involved with, taking him to his dad's on a weekly basis, and one day would have been his grandson by marriage. Like, I just have no words. Okay, let's continue. So after all of that, John loaded Rebekah's body in his truck, threw the rubber mallet and the towels he used to clean up in a large trash bag, and drove away to dispose of her body and these items in a nearby ditch by an intersection. John also claimed he threw away Rebekah's purse, phone, and car keys in the trailer park trash container. In an attempt to mislead investigators, he drove Rebekah's car to the bar parking lot in hopes it would lead investigators to think Rebekah was abducted at the bar. He then returned to Rebekah's home, where he dressed Conway in his Halloween costume before dropping him off at his father's. Like, the fact that he can even look Rebekah's son in the eyes after what he had just done to her is terrifying. Rebekah's body did end up being recovered near an intersection where John had told police to look, and it was found that she had ligature marks around her neck, which corroborated with John's story about the cable ties. One detail that John left out of his confession was that he could not remember if he had performed sexual acts to Rebekah's body, which is such BS to me that he conveniently forgot this detail when he was having fantasies of doing just that. But the autopsy also showed signs of abrasions that indicated that she was SA'd either while she was still alive or shortly after her death, like it wasn't clear. Then on November 1st, 2012, John was arraigned for allegedly killing Rebekah, and he was held without bond, where he would face a first-degree premeditated murder charge. Then a couple months later into the following year, on January 23, 2013, he waived his rights to a preliminary hearing, so his case was transferred over to the circuit court, and a pre-trial hearing was scheduled for February 25th of 2013. Rebekah's mom, Sally, did speak in court, asking for John to be given the same lack of mercy he showed to her daughter, and even addressed him directly, stating she was not yours to take. It's now in March, and John White pled guilty to second-degree murder. Now, this felony is punishable by life or any term of years, and his plea agreement stated that his minimum sentence would be no less than 45 years in prison, but the court can most definitely sentence him to more than that. Also, since this crime took place in Michigan, the state issued a law back in 1998 called the Truth in Sentencing Law, which completely eliminates good time credit, which means John would have to serve the entire minimum sentence before even being considered for parole. So basically, John would not be able to get out any earlier than the 45-year minimum, even if he has good discipline while serving his sentence. But let's face it, John was 55 years old when he was sentenced, so add 45 years, that would put him at a minimum of 100 years old. Like, he's never getting out. So the following month, on April 18th, John was sentenced to 56 years in prison. Police even stated that he confessed to ending Rebekah's life simply because he wanted to live out his fantasies and perform sexual acts to a dead body. Like, that's what he saw Rebekah as, just some object, and it's absolutely disgusting. The judge who sentenced John even stated that he saw no reason for him to ever get out of prison due to obviously what he did to Rebekah, but also because of his 2 prior convictions of attacking women. In my opinion, this man should have never gotten out of jail after attempting to murder Teresa, the 17-year-old he lured and stabbed multiple times. This man is just a monster and deserves every last breath to be behind bars. Now, despite John being sentenced to 56 years, he actually would only serve 4 months of this sentence, as he was found unalive in his jail cell due to self-inflicted asphyxiation, hanging on August 28th, 2013, around 4:30 a.m. The correctional staff and healthcare professionals did try to revive him, but it was too late. And I hope he is now rotting in hell. I'm sorry, I have nothing remotely kind to say about him. So you might be thinking what Rebekah's mom had to say about John after finding out about his past and now what he did to her daughter as she was engaged to the man. Sally did state that she did not know who John was before killing Rebekah, which to me sounds like she did not know about his criminal past and what he was capable of. And she also mentioned that she believes John wanted to go back to prison because of the, quote, structured environment prison provides. And I've actually heard of this before where criminals will get out of jail or prison and they will engage in criminal acts for the purpose of being sent back behind bars. Because in these systems, these people have, routines, they are fed, they have a bed, whereas the real world, you have to create your own routine and essentially provide for yourself, right? Obviously, this is just Sally's opinion on why John killed her daughter. We don't have proof that this was the reason for committing the act or even part of the reason. Also, church members that John was a minister at spoke out saying that they knew about John's criminal history but did not think he was capable of committing such a heinous act because, quote, John had met the Lord and was a changed person. Specifically, the church member that hired John basically blamed Satan, that it was Satan that did not want John to be good. It was also said that Rebekah even mentioned that John creeped her out, and she was even considering moving for safety concerns. But Rebekah really needed help with childcare, and that's why she allowed John to come around. Also, I forgot to mention this, but Rebekah's boyfriend Aaron had actually purchased an engagement ring shortly before Rebekah's death, and I can just imagine how hard all of this would have been for him. I mean, he was planning on spending the rest of his life with Rebekah and took in her son as his own. I feel like we need more people like Rebekah. I mean, her 11-year-old niece at the time shared with the media that Rebekah, quote, taught me not to look at the bad when something bad happens, but to look at the good, end quote. It's just incredibly sad that Rebekah's life had to end this way by a complete and utter monster. But as always, let's not forget that Rebekah's life, impact, and story matter. So that is it for today's case. If you want to support this channel, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell icon so you don't miss any future episodes. I truly, truly, truly appreciate this support. So please, y'all, be safe out there. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.